93 WIBC, the Secretary of Education, Betsy DeVos, is here. Now, I have to, let me give you a little bit behind the scenes. We thought you were coming in a little bit earlier. I was all ready for you. We had a plan. You know, everything, all plans, you know, the first shot is fired. All plans go, Madam Secretary. So then you had the chance to speak with Eric Berman, our chief political correspondent at WIBC. So he has asked all the pertinent questions. I watched it happen. So now I have to get to the other questions. And I do have a couple, because one of the reasons that you are here is that you're having a conversation about school choice. You're having a conversation about vouchers. And I still find myself in a place where I don't understand why vouchers create such animosity. Vouchers create this almost straight dividing line. Yes, they're wonderful. No, they're the great evil. Describe a voucher to me and why you think that's valuable in creating better opportunities for education.
Well, sure, Tony. First of all, thanks for having me here today and
Sure.
this morning. Let's just step back a moment and talk about what is actually behind a voucher. And what it really is a method of being able to make a choice in something. In this case, we're talking about making a choice for education. And vouchers are really only one delivery mechanism. There are many different ways to empower families, empower parents, empower kids to have choices on where they get and where they receive education and learning. So I think we sometimes get sort of tripped up in the terminology, but there are many different avenues and many different pathways to having choices. There are tax credit scholarships. There are charter schools, which are public schools, but many people think of them in some way different than what they've been described. There are education savings accounts. There are course choices. There are many different selections, many different menu options, and what we're talking about is really empowering parents and families to be able to make a full range of choices.
But in all those conversations and in all those options, Secretary DeVos, it comes down to the idea, and we see this from protesters who came out yesterday to protest you here. You're used to it. It was only 100 people. That is small for you. That is small. Your draw is not as big as it used to be, Madam Secretary.
Indeed.
Is that it's painted as anti-teacher? Is a voucher anti-teacher?
Absolutely not. First of all, let me just state unequivocally, we are for and support good teachers and great teaching. And in fact, we should be supporting teachers across the board even more. We should be honoring them for the important role that they have in helping children learn. This is about empowering families, however, to find the best education environment for their kids. You and I probably had those choices. Many families do not, because of where they live, because of their economic means. We need to ensure that all families have the same kind of choices. And with those choices, they're going to be able to choose settings that fit for the child and where the teacher is key in helping that child learn.
Talking to Education Secretary Betsy DeVos, from your speech last night, I'm going to quote, if you don't mind. Defenders of our current system have regularly been resistant to any meaningful change. In resisting, these flat earthers, your words, have chilled creativity and stopped American kids from competing at the highest levels. Flat earther is a term I use on many different things when I talk about science deniers in a whole series of places. I have rarely heard it used in the world of education. What is it that they deny? Are they denying the idea that choice is better, or are they denying the idea that kids deserve and parents deserve the best choice for their kids? Which way does it, as you see it, how does it go?
As I see it, education as a broad industry, and let's face it, it really is an industry, is the least changed and the least disrupted of any industry in our country. We are still operating under what is essentially the Prussian model brought to us more than 150 years ago. That was right and good for the Industrial Revolution and the Industrial Age, but today has very little bearing on the reality of how our world is working in the 21st century. And we have seen attempts to continue to reform and change, all of them from the top down, and all of them to a one-size-fits-all model and approach. We believe that the most important changes are going to take place when states and local communities and indeed parents are empowered to make choices and to try new things and to have creativity injected in a new way into education that hasn't been the reality for decades.
Is part of the problem the existence of the Department of Education to begin with? Would we be better off if the Department of Education did not exist?
The Department of Education has played an important role in the past decades and continues to have a role to play with regard to students with special needs and civil rights. But the department, the federal government, has also overreached its role in many cases. And we are very intent on ensuring that the overreach that has occurred in the last several decades is brought back, and that the power is sent back to and devolved back to the states and to local communities, and again to parents who are best equipped to make decisions on behalf of their kids.
Talking to Education Secretary Betsy DeVos. I've got two more before I let you go. And I remember Eric Berman stole all my thunder. I just want to put that out there. You went through a brutal nomination. You went through a brutal vote to be confirmed as Secretary of Education. You had a tremendous amount of defenders that did not get serious airtime and worthy airtime. But one of the clips that got played most often was Senator Al Franken of Minnesota asking this question about proficiency versus growth, as if that was the key to determining whether someone could be the education secretary. I never understood what the purpose was. And I was wondering if, coming back to it later, can we discuss this idea of proficiency versus growth? And is that something that is a worthy measuring stick, yardstick regarding education in our kids?
Well, this has been a debate within the education world for a long time. So measuring the growth of a student versus a student's proficiency those are two different measures. I would argue both of which have some validity and merit in the discussion. But I believe that the more important measure is whether a student masters the material that they should learn, and attributes that all to, or it puts that all into their backpack of knowledge and continues to then move on to the next level of mastery. We do not orient around that currently. There are some pilots and there are some experiments in limited areas around measuring the mastery of a student versus the time that they sit in a seat. I would argue that's a very important migration that we should be focused on and we should be talking about a whole lot more. If I have a student in a class who passes a test with a 70%, that means that 30% of the material that student likely hasn't learned. How much better to ensure that student learns 100% of the material and then moves on to the next level? We are not currently oriented around that. So the whole notion of growth versus proficiency is really a look backwards as opposed to a look forwards, which mastery and competence is focused on.
Secretary, I got to let you go because you've got things to do, and if I don't pay the bills around here, they frown on that. I appreciate you being with us. The best of luck in your travels. If you see a guy named Mike, tell him we say hello. We're holding down the fort for him at the station. He should stop by and visit.
I will do that, Tony. Thanks so much for having me.
Secretary DeVos, thank you. Let's check the roadway.